Have you ever felt that you're running on a hamster wheel with some kind of problem or cycle you want to break, and that you're trying and nothing seems to be working? Well, that's incredibly frustrating, and I really think that we've all been there at times. Today, I want to share with you a deceptively simple little Irish story that offers some surprising insight into those kinds of cycles, those hamster wheels, and how to get off of them. So if you find yourself in a cycle you'd like to break or in some way stuck, today's story is for you. So fáilte a chairde, welcome, welcome my friends. I'm so glad that you're here and I'm so glad that we're together. If this is your first time joining us, my name is Cáit and I'm a professor of Irish language and folklore, and I really love to share Irish tales and traditions and philosophies and all the good things with you because I think that they make our lives more joyful and creative. So this story was told by a wonderful storyteller called Bob Féiritéar, and Bob was, her name, Bob is a kind of pet name for her, was Cáit ní Ghuithín, and she was born in 1916 and lived until 2005. So she lived a great long life and she told many, many stories. She lived in Ghuithín in County Kerry, so in the southwest of Ireland, and she honestly was beloved. She did a lot for stories and storytelling. So this story is called An Cáit is an Luch, the cat and the mouse, and I'll tell it to you and then we'll talk it over. Fado in éireann bhí cáit agus an luch. Once long ago in Ireland there was a cat and a mouse, and you know what they were doing? They were playing in front of the fire early on a Sunday morning before Mass, and the play got a little bit rough, and before they knew what was happening, what had occurred, but the cat had clawed the little mousie's tail clean off of her backside and was holding it up in the cat. The cat was holding it up in her claw. And the mousie said, oh my goodness, no, Féire manaire, she says. It's my shame, she said. Please give me my tail back so that I can go to Mass. And the cat grinned for a moment and said, I will give you your tail back if you will go to the cow and get me a drink of milk. Oh, goodness, said the poor little mousie, I'm going to be so late. But sure enough, she ran out to the byre and there was the cow. And she said to the cow, Cow, would you please give me a drink of milk so that I can give it to the cat, so that the cat will give me my little tail back and so that I can go to Mass? And the cow gave a long moo and said, I will give you a drink of milk, but first you need to go to the barn and get me a sup of hay. Oh, goodness, said the mousie, it's going to make me even later. But she went to the barn and she said, Barn, please, would you give me a sup of hay so that I can give it to the cow, and the cow will give me a drink of milk so that I can give the drink of milk to the cat, and the cat will give me back my tail, and then I can go to Mass. Whew. And the barn said, I will, but you need to get the key from the blacksmith. Oh, goodness, said the poor little mousie. That's going to make me even later, but I will. And so off she rushed until she came to An Gheobhaidh, the blacksmith. And she said, please, blacksmith, please give me the key, and so that I can take it to the barn, and the barn will give me a sup of hay, and I can give the sup of hay to the cow, and the cow will give me a drink of milk, and I can give the drink of milk to the cat, and the cat will give me my little tail back so that I can go to Mass. Whew! And the Gheobhaidh, the blacksmith, said, I will, but first you must do one thing for me. You must fill this sieve with water, a colander, a kind of colander, and bring it back to me. Oh, said the mouse, that's going to make me even later, but I'll try. And so she took the sieve to the river. And what did she do, of course, but try and try and try. She would dip it into the river and pull it up, and of course what happened? But all the water went out the little holes. Every time she'd try and try and try. And it was very frustrating. And at last she sort of gave up and just sat on the bank of the river. And when she did, what did she hear but the voice of the robin? And the robin said, "Craomh agus búltach, craomh agus búltach a chalín, yellow clay and cow dung, yellow clay and cow dung, my girl." And then the mousie understood. And what did she do? But she took some yellow clay from the riverbank and some cow dung from the field and patted it all over the sieve and let it dry in the sun, just for a few minutes. And of course, as soon as it was dry, she dipped it into the river and it held the water. And she brought it back to the blacksmith and said, "Here is the sieve full of water, just as you asked. Please give me the key so that I can give it to the barn, so the barn will give me a sup of hay, so I can give the sup of hay to the cow, and the cow will give me a drink of milk, and I can give the drink of milk to the cat, and the cat will give me my little tail back, and I can go to Mass." And so that's what happened. She gave the key to the barn, and the barn gave her a sup of hay. She gave the sup of hay to the cow, and the cow gave her a drink of milk. She gave the drink of milk to the cat, and the cat, indeed, was as good as her word and gave her back her little tail. And she put on the tail and went off to Mass, but I'm sorry to tell you, she was late for Mass, as it happens. And when the cat found out that she'd been late for Mass, the cat said, "I won't play with the mousie again before Mass, ever again. I won't take off any mousie's tails." And ever after that day, if a cat catches a mouse, she catches her by the head and not the tail. Sin é me scéalsa má tá breac an bíú. That's my story, and if there's a lie in it, so be it. So quite a story that is. It's what is known as a scéal dréimire, which means a ladder story, or a scéal slabhra, or a chain story, links of a chain. And you can see why. It's just like the house that Jack built, that kind of a story that goes on. And of course, it's a good story for reinforcing memory. But for our purposes today, I really see it as a story of a cycle that needs to be broken. Now, each of the characters in this story teach us something about the evolution we must undergo in order to break a kind of cycle. Now, I will start right at the very beginning and say the cat is a kind of dangerous friend. She's not entirely bad, but she's attuned to her own nature, isn't she? And one might even say to yourself, why is this mouse playing with a dangerous friend before Mass, right? This dangerous friend has done something to the mouse which brings shame. Féire manoire. She says, "Oh, look at my shame. I'm ashamed. That mousie has lost a part of herself, and that prevents her from doing something that's really important, which is going to Mass, because that Mass is an opportunity to participate in a spiritual and social world that furthers her wholeness." So you might even say that this mousie has kicked off this cycle herself, which I would say, I'll speak for myself. Whenever I look at my own kind of vicious cycles, I realize I can look at a point where I did something that was not helpful or true to myself, and it kicked off the next steps. So first of all, to be playing with this dangerous friend, that's where this cycle begins. Next, we have this kind of evolution which plays out. The mousie goes to the cow, and I would say the cow here is you're asking for sustenance, you're asking for support in a real way. And of course, you can't get it. Then you go to structure, and you can't get that either. The barn is, I'm reading the barn as a kind of structure and storehouse, almost an institution here. And also that's locked, that's barred to her, which is a kind of parallel to Mass. Finally, she arrives at Angawa, the blacksmith. And the blacksmith, all really through Irish history and mythology and folklore, has been considered magical, an icon of transformation. And so it's no surprise that in this case, it's the blacksmith who sort of breaks the ongoing cycle of just asking by asking for something different, something that poses a riddle. It's kind of like a Chaoin, right? One of those kind of mythic riddles that sort of kind of breaks your brain for a minute. It breaks the cycle. And of course, so asking for a sieve to be filled with water, I think that's such really a beautiful metaphor for the mousie herself and for ourselves when we are stuck in some way. We are leaking. we're leaking time, we're leaking energy, we're leaking self-respect, whatever it is. And nothing can move forward until that which is leaking is made whole. Now, the mousie is in that way of thinking. She does not know how to fill that sieve. It just does. This is a riddle that doesn't make any sense to her. And of course she does what we all do, which is sort of bang our little head against the wall, trying. Like maybe this time water will stay in the sieve. It doesn't work. And it's only really when she gives up and sits on the riverbank, just pausing, that she hears the voice of an spidgeog, the robin. Now, I find the robin so lovely. The robin is there up over her head on a branch, and the robin gives her what is going to be the key, will get her the key. It's interesting, so Luch is a mouse, but also another word for mouse is luchog, and the word for robin is spidgeog, and so there's that og part is kind of a littleness. And so I like here, and maybe I'm going too far, you might think I am, but it's fun to play with this, that the robin is maybe a kind of reflection of the mouse that is not earthbound, that is able to fly. And so we can see the robin, I definitely see the robin as the voice of intuition that has more freedom and sees a greater scope of possibilities, a greater world than simply being trapped in that cycle again and again and again, the hamster wheel. And so the robin's advice is also interesting. Cré bhuí agus buailteach, so yellow clay and cow dung. Now that's opposite in a way from the robin itself, but it says something very practical, something earthy is the key here. You've got to plug the holes. Now, I hope that you're seeing a relationship here with the story and your own conundrums. I definitely do. When I think about the holes in my life, where is time, attention, money, energy, where are those things leaking out? And how do we plug the holes? We plug the holes in very practical ways. We sort of put our feet on the earth, don't we? And that's what I take from this. It's like the yellow clay and the cow dung, the willingness to get your hands a little bit dirty as you plug those holes. Maybe you call and ask for a payment plan. Maybe you decide it's time to go to bed earlier. Maybe you decide that you need to put a gentle boundary up, at least in your mind and heart, with someone who's taking a bit too much from you. All of these ways, to me, that is the yellow clay and the cow dung. It's the willingness to look squarely and say, where is the stuff leaking out? And what can I do about it? I think in my own life, plugging the holes is often such a practical thing. It's like, Kate, just do the dishes or do the laundry, go to bed early tonight. they're very, very practical, doable things. We're not talking about anything like a 10-step program. We're talking about something you can do today that begins to plug the holes. And look what happens when we do. She, of course, the mousie, returns to the blacksmith, this icon of transformation, and he gives her the key. The key, right? That's the key. The key to breaking this whole cycle, the key to getting a part of yourself back, which has been lost. And of course, from the key comes all of the pieces until the end of the story when she is free to go to Mass. Now, it's true that she was late for Mass, and I understand that as saying these things take the time they take. She still gets there. She still is whole, and these things take the time they take. Now, we have this little coda that ever since that day, when cats catch a mouse, they catch them by the head in a more catastrophic way. No pun intended. Or okay, it is. But to me, that says we've set a precedent, and we're not going to let this happen again. Perhaps other mousies may be caught, but this mousie has, I hope, learned her lesson. So I'm seeing this tale as offering quite a practical roadmap of steps to getting free of a hamster wheel, of a cycle, if we're caught in a cycle. And that's what a scéal dréimire or a scéal slabhra, the ladder tail or the chain tail, really are. They are a depiction of a cycle that has to change in some way in order to move forward. That's us. That's us. So the first step I see here is recognizing that we're in that cycle. And then listening to the voice of intuition. Now, I know that's a big thing to say, but when we can even look here at the mouse and say, how did she ever get to that point? She went to a new environment, and I really think that's helpful, is to like break out of the actual places where you are. Go somewhere new. The public library is often a good place for me to go. A cafe, or just a drive, or just a walk. Break out of the cycle. She gets out of the barn, the byre, the house, and she goes to the river. And I find often that in Irish tales and proverbs that the river is a kind of metaphor for life itself. So she's taken herself out of the ordinary, and she's here, you know, Éist le ceol na habhann agus gheobhaidh breac. Listen to the music of the river, and you will get a trout, is one proverb that I just love. So here she is at the riverside, and she's still trying, but she does stop. So she's in a new place, and she stops. And so I think that's part of the wisdom of this tale for us. It's like, recognize we're in a cycle. Stop what we're doing and listen. Now, I think this is also interesting right now because we're at a moment where we have access to lots of wisdom in the world, and that is marvelous. But I just want to make a little vote here for our own wisdom. Honestly, the cycles and the conundrums that we get in are tailor-fit to our own lives, aren't they? And so the solutions for them, we can get some help from the outside. I feel like we're being trained to listen outside, to go look online, to ask an expert. But one thing I keep learning is that you and I are honestly the best experts of our own lives in so many regards. Not every way, but in so many regards. And maybe to listen inside first. So once she has listened, she is invited into a solution which is quite practical. So she needs to take care of the leaks, and that's the same for us. Take care of the leaks of energy, of self-respect, of time, of attention, of goodwill, whatever that is. And then we take care of those leaks in very practical ways, very earthy ways. And to me, there's a big shift here from shame, which is being ashamed of who you are, of something about yourself that seems wrong, to humility, which to me is the willingness to learn. And finally, so she's made that shift by the end, and I think she has learned. I don't think this mousie will be in this situation again. And finally, that process of learning, of taking that in, of really, she does get to go to Mass. She does get to join up with other people. So that's really the last step, is learning, remaining humble, listening to yourself, doing what needs to be done. So I know it's really a children's story. It's a story for memory, really. But I think it has a lot, it comes back to me again and again, which is why I wanted to share it with you. So I hope you enjoy that story. And if you did, I hope that you will like this video, which honestly helps me so much. If you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel. It's free, and we love to have you connected with us. It's just a great joy. Maybe you might share this story with someone who might be able to use it. So finally, let me ask you a question. Have you ever found yourself in a spin cycle like this? And if you have, what has been something that you've done or a new way of thinking that's helped you to break free of it? Let's share the wisdom. You are amazing, my friends. I read your comments with so much appreciation, and I feel so lucky to be in a community of so many wise and loving people. So thank you so much again, as ever, for being here. And my friends, I hope that if you're in a cycle in any part of your life, that you'll find this little tale helpful to you. And let's break free. Let's find our way out. We can do it with new thinking, with new places, with new solutions. We know we can do it. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next week.